Appalachia, southern Appalachia as a whole, often is depicted as being a Unionist region, but that's deceptive because Southwest Virginia was actually very much pro-secession. Western North Carolina sort of leaned pro-Confederate, and then Northeast Tennessee was very staunchly pro-Union. It's complicated, and probably the greatest complication is the idea of the relationship to the institution of slavery, because within Southern Appalachia you don't have a regionally large slave population. The enslaved population is only going to be about 10 to 12% of the total population.
You do have enslavement and enslaved people in Washington County. Most households who were enslavers would only own like one or two enslaved people. It's rare that you have much more than that, especially in Washington County. Jonesboro is interesting in that, yes, as a whole, East Tennessee, is a mixed bag. Washington County is going to vote no on secession twice. It's Middle Tennessee and West Tennessee that push Tennessee as a whole into the Confederacy. At the very start of the war, Jonesboro is actually pretty pro-Confederate. And I think part of that is because Jonesboro has a fair amount of money in it. And that tends to be who supports the Confederacy, especially early on.
One of the key things to look at here is sort of the arguments of unionism. The idea of unionism, right? It's not synonymous with abolitionism or an opposition to slavery. And people like Andrew Johnson made the argument. He wasn't alone. There were many of them, particularly in the Upper South, who made the argument that secession would be the death knell of the institution of slavery, that by leaving the United States and by leaving the protections of the Constitution, that ostensibly they were putting slavery on the path to extinction.
And by the time you get to like 1864, sympathy has definitely switched in town, and it's very pro-union now. When the war's over, your Sheriff Shipley is extremely pro-union. There are some people who are not welcome back in town. Of Jonesboro's prominent Confederates who did leave because they had to leave. They were run out of town, essentially, after the war. Most of them come back in the 1870s.